Good afternoon, folks. It's Daniel Rashid. I'm here to talk about land and whether or not it's a good investment. All right, there's always a lot of questions about land. Whether or not it's a good investment for you. Do you buy out, in rural areas? Do you buy in the city centers? Do you buy in subdivisions on the waterfront? How do you guarantee your income on, return on investment? And that's the problem right there. The unpredictability about land. You'd have to be a genius to really predict the climate and value of land and whether or not you'll be able to sell depending on the market and where things are in the world. In my local market, I'm sure yours is the same way. There's a ton of land that is for sale and some key property that's been for sale forever. And these properties are land. There's one in particular that I can bring to mind right now that it's got great potential. AAA land, good acreage, beautiful for development. Whatever you want to do with it, it's a cash cow. You can make a ton of money on that piece of land, but it also costs a ton of money to buy in. So you see that land just being listed and listed and relisted and relisted, and days of market just go in the thousands, and it doesn't sell. It just doesn't sell. And, that's where you're playing the risk. Sure, there maybe was potential there for you as an investor to kind of buy in. But after a few years of trying to sell, you can start getting nervous. It sucks not to sell your land, to not sell anything. Meanwhile, the big cons of with land is that you bought in. It doesn't make you any money. Doesn't do anything for you. It sits there. You probably have to cut the grass sometimes too. You probably have to maintain some of it. You got to pay property tax on it. Whatever you bought it with, are you paying interest on your money? And even if you're not paying interest, if you bought it with cash, you tied up your money. So you might run into those difficulties with purchasing land, and I'm just not a big fan personally. I know folks that have made some money buying in key subdivision areas, but they're playing a risk. You're playing with fire. You're tying up your money with the possibility that you sell, and everyone wants to negotiate. So when someone's bidding on your land, they know it's not making you money. They have a set price in mind, and you likely will negotiate down your price, possibly, or you're going to be hanging on to it for who knows how long. So it's not my cup of tea. I don't like to buy land, hold, and sell it. Now, obviously, it's different if you're going to develop it. That's a different business. You're developing land to sell or developing single-family homes to sell. For example, in my local market, there was a duplex that got listed. That duplex is selling for something like $400,000. It's going to sell. The rents are decent. Cap rate's okay. It could be a lot better. But it will sell for that price just because of this market demand here. Now, that particular property 15 years ago, roughly, I think, roughly that, sold for about $151,000. So let's say $150,000 just to be rounded. The climb in income, appreciation on that property is pretty significant. A few $100,000 of income that person is going to make selling that property. On top of that, they had the rents coming in to pay down the taxes, pay down the mortgage. If it was a cash buy, then they paid down that. For the climb in value, it's worthwhile. They've always had a property that they can hang on to or sell at any time. They can pull their chips out. They're not going to be running into difficulty selling that property. And then when it comes to this today, they're selling for a profit, substantial. Even if they sold $300,000, they made positive cash flow. They sold for $200,000. They made $1/4 more than what they bought it for. It's pretty incredible. On top of the $1/4 more, they have all the rental income that they've generated from it. You can't do that with land. That's why I more advocate towards multi-units or something that you can do something with. I don't care what it is. Single family home, waterfront property that you're Airbnb in and you've built a business. I got a beautiful property, 60 acres of land, great rental business, just fantastic sort of business model. Now, okay, so let's one more example I want to give you, and then we'll cut it. So that duplex, let's take that duplex off the lot. A few years ago, or 15 years ago, that land possibly would sell for about 45,000, roughly. So about 1/3 of the price that they paid for, that land sold for, 15 years ago. If someone hung on to that to this day and age, a duplex lot in that same location right now, 100 grand, 110,000 maybe, they might be stretching, but let's say 100 grand is to be round. So they made about 50% income, whatever. It's like 60 grand or something. Now that was land that they had to pay property tax on. There's no generated income. They had to pay, different fees to hold that property. They've tied up their cash for a bit of a profit at the end. A bit of a profit's good, but for 15 years, I'd rather take the 260,000 that these folks are going to make. I'd rather take that number than, 50,000 minus all the fees that I paid over 15 years. Who knows what that is at the end of the day. So that's what I'm talking about. Land doesn't really, it does work for some. You might get lucky, given that, but I'd much rather get lucky with property that I can pull out anytime. You try pulling out of land that you don't want, you're going to run into problems. You likely will lose money on that land. So be careful, be smart about your decisions. Don't have to listen to me. This is just my opinion. And that's my 2 cents on buying land. Take care.